All right, I'm going to get started. But man, that sun. I'm going to have to move a little bit here. Try to get that glare off the screen. All right, much better. Had that terrible glare. It's still going to come through a little bit, but that is okay. The sun is going to rise and get out of the way. But it is still shining through. Hope you're having a good morning so far. We'll get the music stopped. Thinking about moving once again, moving forward a little bit. Trying to block out. I guess I can just, yeah. I'll just do that for now. Adjust the mic a little bit. That's a little better. I hope you're having a great morning. It's beautiful out here on my back porch, listening to the birds chirping. Maybe you'll join me for a couple of moments. I'll just start with some quiet. We're going to talk about what it takes to live your best life. And the first thing, the first key is finding a quiet place. Life is not always quiet. You could even say, depending on how you define quiet, that life is never quiet. There's a constant shifting, a flow, a movement to life. And the first step to unlocking your true potential, I'm kind of giving away everything I'm about to say. The first step to unlocking your true potential is just relaxing into what is. What's going on around us right now? Hear the sound of the birds chirping. If you're someone who goes to an office for work, it's taking a moment, maybe when you first come in, sitting down at your desk, getting quiet. What's happening? It's applicable in conversations with friends, family, coworkers, the boss. There's a saying, something like, when you're listening, you're learning. When you're speaking, you're learning nothing. There's a better way of saying it, but it's there. That doesn't just apply in social situations or work situations where we're dealing with others. It applies right here and right now. So we start with that quiet place. Maybe you feel yourself settling in. Always pulled one direction or another. Notice the sensations in your body as you sit, as you stand, as you lie down, wherever you are. Really feel your body. There's time to worry. There's time to think. There's time to do all that later. Let's just take a moment right now, just a moment. Bring your awareness to your body, where you are right here, right now, feeling the body. Maybe as you notice, maybe as you feel the mind kind of settle. That energy draws down. It's still there, ready. It's like the pond. The ripples are spreading out to the edge. We're left with glassy stillness in the middle. This is the first step. We're figuring out where we are right now, right here. Where are we? What's happening? Not just out here. I hear the birds. I see the sunshine that I had to move the computer to avoid. Where are we right now? I feel the sensation of this rocking bench beneath me. I see the computer in front of me, this mic. Maybe you notice tension. Maybe you notice hope, excitement for the day. Whatever it is, just be there with it. Just a few moments. We're going to live to our full potential. We have to figure out where we are now. If we have a map, we're on a journey. Back in the old days, had a map. I guess it works with Google Maps, Waze. But if Google Maps, if we don't know where we are, how are we going to figure out where we're going and how to get there? We have to start right here, right now, as it is, not as I want it to be, as it is. So this applies right here, right now, but this applies on a bigger scale as well. So if you're considering, let's just say you're in business, you have a business for yourself, not living up to your potential. First step, figure out where you are right now with clear eyes. It's hard to do. When I work with a client, that is the first step. We get quiet like this, but on a broader scale, zooming out, where are we now? And I know from personal experience, I know from experience with working with others in business and other contexts, getting a clear glimpse of where we are now can be the hardest thing because the mind is wanting it to be something that it's not. And this isn't entirely bad, but most of my life, and it probably kept me alive, most of my life, I was extremely optimistic. I guess you could say the same now. But I recognized something that I think some would call toxic positivity in that I wasn't realistic about where I was. I said, oh, I can live up to my potential, but I wasn't realistic about where I was. So if that potential is something that's far off and I'm not realistic about where I am, I'm never going to get there. Discovered it for myself over and over again. I see it in business when I'm helping somebody, consulting. Where are you now? So first step, figure out where you are. Get quiet. Figure out where you are. This applies to anything if you're not living up to potential. You could say spiritually, in your career, with your family, friendships, lack thereof. Where are you now? So part of that, what can help is finding someone to go on that journey with you. In certain versions of spirituality, they call it a guru. Others have a priest, therapist, for those who don't have a spiritual tradition or religion, business coach, mentor, list goes on. It can be very helpful to find someone to take that journey with you, someone who has been on that journey or is on that journey, but hopefully someone who's already walked the landscape, not somebody who has a certification or took a class, who has knowledge. Knowledge is of limited usefulness in this arena. It's not knowledge we need, it's experience, it's beingness. Who has been where I've been? Who is that person for you? Everyone needs that person. I need that person. You need that person. Who's our sounding board? Who is that person with the experience? Think of them. Is it someone you know personally, you have a friendship with? Is it somebody you'd like to know? Is it somebody in the public eye? There's plenty of people on Instagram, other places. Who is that person that's going to help you have that clear view? Because it is hard to see where we are, this first step, to figure out where we are. Because we're not going to go where we want to go to live up to our full potential until we figure out where we are now. So we get quiet, we figure out where we are now. Funny enough, next step, figure out the trajectory we want to take. I'm not even talking about goals now. To me, the goals are fine, but concrete goals tend to change. This is important when I'm working with a client. Goals are going to change. Goals being very specific things, and I'm defining it my own way, I suppose. But for instance, I'll use a financial example. Somebody may say, "I want to make $250,000, next year." And that's not the kind of goals that I don't really work with people that have those kinds of goals necessarily, though that could be a sub goal because maybe it's necessary to make that money to accomplish the things they're trying to accomplish. But let's just take that as a goal. Want to make $250,000 next year. But that's a goal. It's very specific. And maybe you discover over the course of that year that it's not as important as you thought. Maybe it's not the money that's important, but the freedom that's important. So setting a goal, a specific goal, is fine, but that's going to change. So that's not what I'm talking about here. So after that first step, discovering where you are, maybe finding someone to take that journey with you, we're going to feel into the life that we want. It's the emotional context. How do I want to live my life? How do I want to feel? How do I want those around me to feel? What do I want the experience to be? So not specifics like making $250,000 a year, but I want to live a fulfilled life where I fully utilize my skills, or I want to live a life where I'm learning something new every day. What is the trajectory we're taking? It's more abstract. What does life feel like when I'm living up to my potential? So figuring that out is important because that's the thing we're going to come back to over and over again. Over and over again, coming back. What is the general tenor of the life I want to live? What's the emotional backdrop? When I'm closing out my life, sitting, thinking back, remembering, what do I want that experience to be like? Because I suspect most of us are probably not going to be in that place thinking, gosh, I should have bought more things, nicer clothes, bigger house, cars, made more money. Maybe some, probably not many. Those aren't going to be the things. So that's what we're talking about here. What are those things that we're going to look back on, imagining? And maybe you just close your eyes right now and you imagine yourself at the end of your life, nice long life. Let's just assume that, whatever that means to you, you're sitting there, comfortable. What is the life? What is the feeling of that life? What has it been? Where do you want to be? What's most important? Next, after figuring out where you are, maybe finding a mentor along the way, discovering the general flow of life, the general tenor, the emotional backdrop of this life. What's the direction you want to head in the abstract? What are the barriers to that? We're not getting to specific goals yet. There are going to be barriers to specific goals. But right now, what are the barriers to that? So your eyes may be closed and you're back, bringing up that feeling that you would have at the end of life, looking back, feeling satisfied, feeling like you lived the life you wanted to live, that you lived up to your full potential. What does that feel like? So, of course, not going to break confidences, so I'm going to change the facts. But I work with someone, and this person is not young, doing well. But when I asked these questions to them, the answers didn't involve money, ever. None. Zero. Didn't even come up once. That only came up later when we were figuring out how to achieve what they want to achieve. It was never about money. I want to live up to my potential. Second question. So this is the actual process I use with clients, whether it's just individuals whose lives they're struggling in life, or a business owner, an attorney whose law firm is kind of dragging them along and not really going where they want to go. Why are you not experiencing this now? What are the barriers? What have been the barriers? What are the barriers? Most importantly, what are the barriers within you to this life that you want to live, this potential that you know is out there? And again, just as when we were saying, be getting a sense of being here now, getting quiet earlier, what's stopping you internally from living that life? Is it anxiety, stress? Don't handle stress well. Get distracted by new ideas. Lots of ideas, but terrible execution. I've been there. Still, maybe to some extent, I have far more ideas than I can ever instantiate in this lifetime. So I understand. What are the barriers internally first? What are the barriers to that life, that potential, that sensation, that experience that you're looking back on at the end of your life? Really get a feel for it. Feel it first throughout this process as we talk here. Feel it all first. Feel it all first. If you find yourself externalizing, and there will be moments to externalize, and there are going to be moments to think about the external barriers. But right now, most of this discussion, what are the internal barriers? Be honest with yourself. Feel it first. No need for honesty if you're just feeling. What are the internal barriers to that full potential? Do you feel the anxiety crushing you? Do you make bad decisions? Are there cycles that you've fallen into? Substance abuse, just giving examples here. Financial issues brought on by internal habits, beliefs. What is stopping you internally? If you have a notebook, write it down. And I say it in private sessions all the time when I'm doing retro session for somebody. If a thought occurs to you as I ask these questions, if a thought occurs to you and you discard it and you push it away, oh, it can't be that. That can't be the barrier to living up to my potential, my internal barriers. Can't be, and let it and slide it away, especially if it's almost unconscious. And maybe in retrospect, you're like, I just pushed something away. You might even forget it. Try to go back to it every time, because that is probably the answer when you've discarded it. And if it's confusing, if it doesn't sound right at first, go back to it, because those, in my experiences, working with myself, working with others, the thing we discard in the moment is often the big thing, the root, the core wound, the core issue that we're facing and seeking our potential. It's the thing we discard. It happens every time. And I see it happen with people that I don't even say this to. And we're going into session. And now I'm talking about individual sessions, going into an individual session. And I can tell, and I don't give it away because I don't want to, if somebody comes in for a session, I don't want them to know what I'm looking for, because I want it to be a natural response. But there's something I can look for, and I can tell when something has come in and been discarded. There's a physical effect that I can see with my eyes. That's why if I do sessions online, it has to be with visual of somebody's face and neck and upper shoulders. But that is the thing. I'll say, whatever it was, you don't even have to tell me, go back to it. So same thing right now. If you have the discipline to anything, anytime I ask a question, if you find yourself having an answer flash or even a sense of an answer that you discard, try to go back to it. That is the biggest shortcut I can give you in this process of unlocking your true potential. If you find yourself noting and then discarding something, go back to it. So much power there. What do you not want to see? So you find that barrier. You find those things that are stopping you internally. Next. No, I'm not going to go next yet, because there's something else to say about this. Because this is very general, but I'm going to get a little more specific. I'm going to talk about me. This applies to many of the people that come to me in private sessions. Just very briefly, I'm not sure who's watching. There are people watching. I don't think I have a way to see that. But if you haven't worked with me, if you're not sure of what I do, I do a couple of things. But the primary thing I do in my office with individuals is something called retrocession. It's a method for going back to the past, finding the things that are still affecting us today, the events in our life that are still affecting us today, and erasing the present day effect of those past events. It's a simple process. It's a process that's been repeated over and over again with myself and others. I've seen the miracle in my own life of what retrocession has done. I've seen it work miracles in other people's lives. Can't guarantee it to every single person every single time, but retrocession works. When we return, we find the root, we re-experience that past event that's plaguing us today. The way my mom talked to me when I was 5, the time I was made fun of in high school for wearing jeans that were too blue. That's a real one from my life. Faded jeans were the thing, and I wasn't allowed to have faded jeans. And that affected me, and I cleared that. And that wasn't the core wound, obviously, but it was one of those things. So we go back, we find the original event that kind of planted a seed that then grew into a plant, a weed essentially, that took over our life, even in some small way or a big way if it's a core wound. And then using this process, we permanently erase the present day effect of that past event. It doesn't mean we forget it. There's a memory, but that memory is kind of like watching a movie. There's not an emotional investment. The emotional investment is erased. And this is what I'm talking about. And this is how I help people unlock their true potential in private sessions. Other ways I do it too. But in those private sessions, in retrocession, we find the barriers, we find them. And the hard thing is, if you're doing this on your own, is our capacity, including me, our capacity for self-delusion is incredible. Our egos, the part of us that we frankly come to think of as us, who we are, this thing that makes mistakes and feels bad and suffers, it has a almost infinite capacity of self-delusion. And I'm not saying ego's bad, this personality that we think of as who we are is bad. It's not that. This isn't a good versus evil thing. What I'm saying is that part of us, the thinking part of us, is really bad at figuring this out. And that's why in private sessions and even this live, we start with deep relaxation, because to get to the meat of it, to get to the heart of the matter, we have to get beneath the conscious mind. And that's why I'm saying in these sessions, and why I say here in this live, as you've closed your eyes in minutes past, if you find yourself thinking of something and discarding it, go back to it. The thinking mind doesn't want to note that thing. Usually that means that is the thing or one of the things that's holding us back. It's funny. It's even ironic that that's how it works. So what I've discovered for myself and in others in these private sessions, I did this on myself for 6 months, and I was doing it from the moment I woke up, wouldn't even open my eyes sometimes, and I would use this process. I would feel like, something isn't right. I'm dreading getting up. I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything. Why is that? And I would use this process, find the root of it. What's stopping me? And always, 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 it wasn't right now, this present moment. It was something from the past, often something from childhood, but not always. It could have been in college. It could have been in high school, younger years. But it's like, I'm going to use the example. I have a degree in computer science. It's like we experience something and we unconsciously or consciously construct a simple program, a computer program. It's something that runs automatically and attempts to solve a problem. And so this problem happens. I'm just making this up. It's not a real one, but my mom yelled at me because I fell and got a hole in my jeans. Maybe that did happen, but not an event that really affected me that I remember. But fell and got a hole in my jeans, and she yelled at me and said, "Your dad worked so hard, and you're ruining everything." So let's just say that's my wound. The mind, and somewhat consciously, but also unconsciously, is like, okay, I don't want this to happen again. This is really unpleasant. There's pain. My mom saying this hurt me emotionally. What am I going to do about it? Now, it's not as deliberative as this, but, got to talk about it. Well, I'm not going to jump off the roof anymore. Whatever I did to rip my pants, jump the fence. I'm going to use the gate. Let's use that as an example. I did jump a fence once as a child and rip a huge hole. It actually ripped the whole leg up. But so this is a fake example, kind of pulled it from real life. Jumped over the fence, ripped this massive hole in my pants. Now, let's just say my mom yelled at me. She didn't in that case. Well, I'm going to use the gate from now on. And now I use the gate every time. So my behavior has changed. This program is installed. It very quickly becomes an unconscious program. Now I just use the gate. That's what I do. And this is just a simple example. We could take deeper examples. If some trauma happened to me, I was abused, and if you've been there, all sorts of coping mechanisms. And there you have the first one, but that one doesn't last very long by itself. That doesn't always work. It usually doesn't work perfectly. So we install another program. Well, that didn't quite work. So let's modify it. We add this other program. We add this other program. We add this other program. Another trauma happens. Ooh, gosh, need a new coping mechanism. Let's add this other one. And we get this aggregation, this mess of what we call in computer science spaghetti code, and it's running and it's interacting in ways that were never intended. And obviously we wouldn't foresee, especially in childhood. And we come out the other end sitting here today, and we maybe we think we're making autonomous decisions for ourselves. But what's really happening is that program's running. And this is from personal experience. I thought I was making decisions for myself for 40 years. Thought I was making decisions for myself to some extent. But once I went through this process of releasing the past's hold on my present through retrocession, I discovered in retrospect that I had never really made decisions myself. Anxiety made it for me. This programming that had been installed over the years made those decisions for me. So in this process, just a quick refresher, this process of living up to our true potential, get quiet, figure out where we are. Can't discover where you're going on a map, even Google Maps, if we don't have GPS, if we don't know where we are to start. So getting quiet and with clear eyes, noting where we are, not where we want to be, not where we'd like to think we're going to go, or where we'd like to think we are, where we truly are right now. Sometimes we find a mentor, somebody that takes that path with us. Then we get a sense of the emotional tenor. So we figured out where we are now. in abstract, where do I want to be? How do I want to feel? How do I want to live this life? I don't want, let's just say I don't want to live a stressful life. I want to learn daily, whatever that case may be. Just in the abstract, where are we trying to go? What is the touchstone? Where are we coming back to over and over again when things get tough? How do we reset? How do we reset? So we get the general tenor of where we are. And then what is stopping us? What are the barriers internally? What are the barriers that are stopping us from living up to our full potential? Sometimes we can figure that out consciously, but most of the time, from personal experience with myself, with others that I work with individually in doing retrocession, we are often unaware of those barriers and often incapable of using our conscious thinking mind to figure out what those barriers are. And that's why I've said a couple times here, and I always say it in session, if I ask a question here and you find yourself discarding an answer before you've even really considered it, go back to it, because that is often the thing. And this mind is like, oh, don't want to touch that because that's going to open up a can of worms. But if you want the answer, the real answer, going back to that discarded answer is often the key. So we're there now. Retrocession, this process I use, there are other ways to do it, is a systematic way of going back and finding the things that are affecting me today from my past. It's a way of deleting the programming of a lifetime. In my case of 47 years, it's a way of going back and deleting that programming. It doesn't mean we erase memories. It doesn't mean I become a mindless robot. It's actually the opposite of that. I was a mindless robot until I got rid of this programming of the past. Then I get to choose, which is a whole nother problem that I've talked about in other streams. Not going to talk about it now. Making decisions for the first time when you think you've made decisions your whole life, when you finally have to, without the urge of anxiety, depression, habit, what my parents told me. It's not easy, but we find those barriers, and in my case, erase them with retrocession. We don't become emotionless when that happens. In fact, I feel my emotions now more than I've ever felt them. What doesn't happen after retrocession, after whatever process you use to erase the hold of the past on your present, once that's gone, permanently gone, I'm not talking about bypass, I'm talking about really gone. Once that's really gone, the emotions still arise. You're still fully human, and I feel more human than I ever have. The emotions come up. I feel anger. I feel sadness. I feel grief. But what happened? It doesn't continue. In my body, it feels like when an emotion comes up, it stops. It comes up, it bubbles up. And then in the past, what would happen is it would trigger some programming, and that would run. We call it being triggered. Emotion happens, then you get triggered, and then you go off. My case, become a basket case, semi-catatonic, laying on the floor, or anxious to the point where I was shaking, couldn't stop. What we're stopping is the triggering, not the initial emotion. We're not stopping the thoughts. We're not stopping the emotion. We're stopping the barriers to those emotions. But the challenge is getting rid of them isn't something where somebody lays hands on you and you get to just step out of the way and say, you know, I don't want to feel it, so I'm going to step out of the way, and someone's going to give me a pill. Somebody's going to give me a mushroom. Somebody's going to give me some substance. Somebody's going to touch me. Somebody's going to say some magic words, and I'm going to be healed. Magic words may be said, maybe something is done, but always, 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 when healing happens, we have to be willing to confront that which we've refused to confront in the past. So surrender is not surrender to someone else because I don't want to deal with the issue. This is like the secret of all healing. It's not that surrendering to somebody else so I don't have to deal with it myself, though that is a strategy some pursue. And I'm going to say right here, right now, without classification or clarification, that isn't going to work. If you don't want to confront the illness at its root, and with the modality I use, the root is individual experiences in this life that I've refused to experience, and I've created all kinds of strategies to avoid experiencing. If you're not willing to go back and reset, it's not going to work. People want to avoid pain at all costs. They want to feel better. They want to be their current self with their current barriers up often, but just want to not suffer anymore. So I want to be exactly who I am, but I don't want to suffer. Well, I'll just say it. You're suffering because of all this programming. It's because of who you think you are. I'm not saying who you are. Who you are is perfect, but you're suffering because who you think you are. So you cannot remain that person and heal. If you are bound and determined to remain exactly who you are right this moment, or who you think you are, I have to say it that way. You're bound and determined to be who you think you are, being triggered by the things you're triggered by, being angry with the people you're angry with, judging the people you feel judgment to. If you want to remain that person, you will not heal. You will not heal. You will not heal. No exceptions. I have a law background. We often say, well, probably, we couch it in those terms, uncertainty. I'm telling you right now, no uncertainty. If you're unwilling to experience change, if you're only willing to do what we did at the beginning of the stream and relax and release and find that place of stillness so that you're able to notice where you actually are, not where you want to be. If you're unwilling to go back to that baseline, to experience things as they are, if you're unwilling to acknowledge what you've become or think you are, if you're unwilling to change or to allow change to naturally unfold as you release your death grip on life, you will not heal. I'm going to say something else about it since we're here at this stage talking about potential, what's holding us back internally. The issue isn't that you need to add something. It's not the next book, though there's absolutely so many reasons to read books. But a book is never going to change things. Adding something is not going to change things. I'll probably do a stream on that at some point, how I use books. Reading a book, learning a new technique, a new type of meditation, a new spiritual practice is not going to fix you. Adding something will never fix you. The fixing always, always, always happens. And it's not when you take something away either. Not adding or taking anything away. Kind of skipping to the end, giving it away. It's recognizing that nothing was wrong in the first place. There is an apparent taking away that happens as we heal. And so we'll just say it's a removing process. Think of it as your light is here. We put some wet blankets on that light over and over again, thousands and thousands of wet blankets from the earliest moments of your life in this body on this planet. You put these wet blankets over your light. And this is a process of removing them. I'm telling you now, and this isn't something to understand intellectually or something to try to instantiate in your life. That's just a model for how it works. My experience is you've always been perfect as you are. And all it takes is recognizing that. And that's even an exaggeration because it's just dropping into that beingness and stopping the striving to be something, stopping the identifying. That's the core of it. But let's just go with that model. So we've covered our light. We remove those pieces, and all these wet blankets that are covering us are intertwined. They're dirty. They've fused together. And so when you rip one off, something else happens and everything moves in that pile. So it is a long, messy process. Well, it doesn't have to be a long process, but it is a messy process. But if you're unwilling to go through that messy process, you will not heal. Healing is very much distinguishable from symptom relief. I say it most streams, but I think it's so important to drive home. There are a lot of techniques that are going to give you symptom relief, but symptom relief is a way of kind of cooling off temporarily. When I was going through the worst time of my life, I started doing hot yoga. And hot yoga was amazing for me. I would go in, I would be depressed, but I knew if I could get myself there, I would just want to get into the yoga room, lay down my mat and lie down, look at the ceiling. And I knew if I could make it, I'd get there as early as I could, 15 minutes before class. And I knew if I could just lay there, look at the ceiling for 15 minutes, as soon as we started moving, I would be okay for 24 hours. But that's what I'm talking about here. Symptom relief. A lot of people are selling you on healing, but it's symptom relief. That's not a problem. Symptom relief isn't bad, healing good. Symptom relief is necessary because if we're constantly triggered, we're never going to have the space to heal. Symptom relief is good, but I just want to make it clear from my experience with myself and others, this isn't something I've read somewhere. Symptom relief will never heal you, but it can be an essential component in the healing. So it's a process of confronting and removing these things that are covering our light. It's not a process of adding something. It's not adding a new type of meditation. Meditation can be part of the process of removing, but it's not going to be by itself. Again, from my personal experience, 25 years of meditation, after 25 years of meditation, I was at my worst in terms of depression and anxiety, programming, I was a mess. The meditation did nothing to heal me. Sometimes it gave symptom relief until the very end, and then it wasn't even doing that. But you have to be willing to confront things as they are, and you have to be willing to experience things as they are, or you will not heal. So that's most of the stream has been talking about internal barriers to living up to your true potential. And the reason and that's most of it, because we probably only have 10 minutes left. I'm going to keep this to an hour or less. Those internal barriers to living up to your true potential are the hardest thing to see. Your conscious mind, this mind that you think of as you, it doesn't want to see them. It doesn't want to see them. So it's hard. It's hard. And that's why most of the stream has been talking about those internal barriers, what I use to remove them for myself, for others. But to think that you can take some easy way out and pay someone some money and they're just going to wave hands over you or give you a pill or some magic mushroom and that's going to fix everything, it's not going to happen. Those things could be tools. Meditation can be a tool. Spiritual practices can be a tool, but without the willingness to surrender to what is, never going to happen. So, are you willing? Really sit there with it. Are you willing? And in AA and other 12-step programs, there's this common thing. And I struggled with substance abuse for a long time. I've been clean and sober for 8 years, and it's no longer a struggle. But they talk about hitting bottom. And that's not an essential component of healing. It was for me. Well, it was at my lowest point. But what I would say is, if you're capable of working through this all now without hitting bottom, freaking go for it. But unfortunately, a lot of us are too comfortable to heal. We're too comfortable to heal. I really mean that. We're too comfortable to heal. Life, we have enough distractions that we can avoid healing. Yeah, I feel like shit and I'm anxious, but as long as I can make it to the end of the day, I'll have a glass of wine and watch TV and I'll be okay. Whatever it is for you, reading books, climbing mountains, skateboarding, fighting, whatever. We're too comfortable. It's easy to drop out for a little bit to get some symptom relief and then, deal with it again tomorrow. I guess it's the optimist I talked about earlier, the optimist in me. I don't think it's necessary to hit bottom, but I could be wrong. That could be the optimist in me. Maybe we do have to hit bottom to truly heal. I did. So what can I say? Everything I talk about is from my personal experience, but I hope for you that you don't have to hit bottom to truly heal and to take away those internal barriers to living your true potential. I had to hit bottom. But once you remove those barriers, once you figured out where you want to go. Once you remove the barriers, we're actually going to move on now. Remove the inner barriers. If you're just coming in, this will be posted on YouTube, my YouTube channel. I think Facebook has it. I don't know about other platforms to rewatch the live, but I've gone through a very specific set of steps to live your full potential. You know what? I'll guarantee it. If you work through these steps that I give, not saying it's easy, but if you work through these steps, you will live to your full potential without a doubt every single day of your life. It'll be hard, challenging, but I think you can do it. But what I would hope for you is that you don't have to hit bottom to finally say, you know what? I'm tired of doing things the same way and getting the same results. I hope for you, you don't have to go through what I went through. It wasn't fun. It was hellish. It was hellish. But even that in my life, it was necessary for me to hit that bottom because now I can help others. And I'm not helping others by picking up a book or getting a certification. I didn't learn this. I didn't learn this from books. I didn't learn this from somebody directly speaking words to me to teach me. I learned this from making the mistakes and then finding a way to pull out of it all. I hope you don't have to do that, but there's going to be some discomfort. So if you're unwilling to be uncomfortable, give up on healing or get some symptom relief until you're willing, whatever the case may be. Once you've cleared those internal barriers, and there's a process for fully clearing them permanently. It sounds crazy. I hear it. I know from personal experience, you can permanently clear these things. But once they're cleared, let's just assume that's possible. You clear those things. Then you reevaluate where you want to go. Because once you clear the barriers, the kind of general idea of where you wanted to go in life, that potential, what it is in general, that changes. Because a lot of what I thought was the life I wanted to live, that potential I thought was inside of me, a lot of that was programming too. So once the programming is erased, it's like, oh, I got to reevaluate this. Now, at its very core, I'm grateful to say that I knew what I was supposed to do to some extent, generally, most of my life. But man, there's a lot of BS piled on top of it. But once that programming is gone, reevaluate the general direction you want to head in. So it's like I'll just, for those who weren't here earlier in the stream, imagine you're at the end of your life, you're comfortable, but you think back on that life. What was that life like? I don't mean specifics, but what was that general flow of life? Did you learn? Did you love? What is the general flow of that life? So we're doing that again after clearing up all the internal barriers. Then turn to the external barriers, because now you have a clear vision of what is, and you can look, okay, that is a putative barrier. Maybe it's not really a barrier, but it seems like a barrier. That's a barrier. That's a barrier. Then you deal with the external barriers. So these internal barriers have taken up probably 35 minutes of the 51-minute stream so far. Now we turn to the external barriers, and I'm not even going to go into that. That's something I do with my clients, law practices that I'm consulting for, individuals who need help with this kind of thing in my office. We deal with those external barriers, and that's where what I talked about earlier, that outsider, the mentor, the person that has a clear sight of who I am and what I'm doing, that person then is indispensable, because I only have the experience I have. So bringing someone in that's been there before is going to be helpful. So then we clear the external barriers. And then, so we're 5 steps into this, whatever it is, just making up a number, didn't write down the steps yet. Then 5 steps into it, now we can start setting goals. So we've now gone through this entire process, and a lot of us will start with goals, but we're almost at the end of this process. The goals don't come until we figure out where we are, where we want to go in general, what the barriers internally are, what the barriers externally are. Then we can set specific goals, and those goals should always, always, always be mutable, changeable. And yeah, I don't have a lot of time left. I'll probably do some more streams in the future about more, I guess you could call them business topics. Business to me is non-different from anything else. Internal psychology, spirituality. It's all the same thing. But it's just a different packaging for it. But we'll probably talk specifically about business and what I've learned and what I help people with. But goals, defined as I'm defining them, specific objectives, should always be mutable. And I say this because the person who's successful, however you define it, doesn't matter. If you define it monetarily, cool. If you define success as something else, doesn't matter. However you define success, those who are most successful, those who are successful, period, are those who persist. But as a business attorney in the past, I don't actively practice law now, retired my law license, but from seeing hundreds of businesses fail, I don't know if hundreds of them failed, but I saw hundreds of businesses, many of them failed, more than half of them. My first thought when I thought of, only those who persist make it. Well, there were plenty of people that had bad business ideas that persisted. That's obviously not the solution to the issue. You don't want to persist with a bad idea, but that's why I'm saying the goals have to be mutable, changeable. Goals, specifics should be changeable, because where those people failed is not in failing to persist, but they persisted with a bad idea. They had a goal and they said, I started that goal, I'm going to finish it. Well, if you have a bad business idea, and if you watch something like Dragon's Den, or that's the UK version, or Shark Tank, there are some bad ideas. And I had some people sit in my law office with some bad ideas, and I would, in the lightest way possible, giving legal advice, not business advice, but I'd slip a little business advice in. This isn't a great idea. I'd find a subtle way of saying that, but it's not persisting in doggedly pursuing the specific goal. It's this thin line, this razor's edge between persisting on a specific goal and determining when it needs to be modified. Hard one, though, because if you're constantly modifying your goals, you're also not going to get anywhere. Plenty more to say about that. I made all the mistakes. So having those goals, making them mutable, is now at the end of the process, not the beginning. We don't set the goals at the beginning of the process. We set them at the end, near the end. Set those mutable goals. Start with the end in mind when those goals are set. So we started with the end in mind earlier. I said, you're at the end of your life looking back. What is the general flow of your life? How did it go? How did it feel? What was the experience like? We're doing the same thing again. So we're nesting it. That's my computer science background. It's recursive. It's fractal. We're getting inside. We're doing it again. Now with these specific goals, we start with the end in mind. I've achieved that goal, and then I back my way through, start and rewind the tape. How did I get to that success? And then I end up at today. And what is the one step I'm going to take today to work toward that goal? Or what are the two steps? And that one is, you'll hear that from a lot of people. What I'm adding is, what is the step I'm going to take? And then committing to, once I take that step, setting the next step. Always, never ending a step and then taking a break. Set the step, determine what the next step is, and set a deadline. All mutable, but always setting the next step. Because a lot of people will come up with that first step, maybe even the first 10 steps, but then they'll stop at some point. And when they let that go, goal is as good as failed. So here at the end of the process, I know I've said it over and over again, but I think it's important to drive it home. We're not setting goals. That's not how we live our true potential. I think a lot of self-help people will tell you that. We set goals and we doggedly pursue them. I disagree. The goals come last, or near the end of the process of living up to our true potential. We have to, I'm going to recap, getting close to the hour mark. Number one, I'll give you the process right here. A couple people just came on. Number one, sit quietly. See where you are with clear vision. So hard. So much capacity for self-delusion. First, where are you right now? And you have to get quiet to do that, because the mind is going to tell us all sorts of stuff, especially if you're like me, optimistic or pessimistic, actually. Either direction, your mind is going to delude you. So I'm saying really see where you are right here, right now. As a sub point, maybe you find a mentor, somebody who's been on the journey, who's somebody The Bible says, know a tree by its fruit. Somebody who bears that fruit that you want to bear, find that person. I think it's probably not 100% essential. Some would probably disagree. Find that person, that mentor, that coach, that whatever they call a guru, the priest, pastor, whatever they are. Person who's been there, done that. Not somebody who's learned about doing it and who's learned about the steps along the way. Somebody who has been there and done that. So if you want peace in your life, find somebody who is peaceful. So that's a sub point. So we figure out where we are. Number 2, determine generally where you want to go. And we did that here by moving to the end of our life in our imagination. We're sitting there comfortable, looking back. What did life feel like? What was the general tenor of our life? How did it flow? So not specifically what happened. I made a lot of money, et cetera, big house, whatever. How did that go? Did I make relationships important? Is that why I'm so comfortable here at the end of my life? Did I focus on love? Did I focus on achievement? Did I focus on learning? What did I do? So we get that general tenor. Then this is the part that took up the whole stream. And frankly, if this is interesting to you, go back on YouTube or Facebook and watch the whole stream. It's all practical. The most important part, well, not the most important, but the hardest part, the hardest part, and why we covered it mostly in the stream, is find the internal barriers to living that life that you just envisioned. It's not easy because of that capacity for self-delusion. And in summary, and summarizing a lot of the stream, is seeing with clear sight how the past is affecting your present and then clearing that up. I do it through something called retrocession in individual sessions, permanently clearing it, not assuaging the symptoms temporarily, permanently clearing it. Then reevaluating, so we're moving on to the next step, reevaluating the general tenor of your life, going back to that exercise of imagining yourself at the end of life. We do it again because some of what we imagined is likely part of our programming. Once we clear the programming, we have clear sight of the direction we want our life to go, or even just a short period, but we have a clear sight of it. Then we turn to external barriers. What are the external barriers to living this life? Other people. We don't do that first because, believe me, a lot of what appears to be an external barrier is internal. It's our reaction to it. So once we clear the internal reactions, now we can get a clear sight of actual. And I'm going to tell you, in most cases, the external barriers are just such a minimal part of it. But anyway, clear the external barriers. Then we don't start with the goal. We end with the goals. Goals being specific things that we're going to achieve. And they must be mutable. We must be willing to change them. But there is a fine line between changing our goals constantly and refusing to change them. I say this from experience as a business attorney. I say this from experience in my life. It's a fine line. Maybe I'll do a stream on that in the future. What I've learned about mutable goals, how mutable should they be? How do we decide when to change those goals? Then, last step, kind of. We go through a cycle and do it all again, but we set the goals and then we start with the end in mind, kind of like we did imagining the end of our life. This time we're imagining we've accomplished that goal, in one specific goal, and we rewind that tape. If you're my age group, if you're slightly younger, you rewind the DVD. If you're even younger, you take the slider on Netflix and slide it to the left and watch what happened. How did you achieve it? Maybe even write it down. I do it all the time. I start with the end in mind and then reverse through it. And I write down, how did I start today to get to that goal? What is the one step? And then the most important part is not just determining the first step toward that potential, toward that goal, but committing, I'm going to take that step on a particular day and time, hopefully in the next 10 minutes. And then when I do that, I am going to set the next step and I'm going to set a deadline for it. Because if you just set the next step, you might not set the next goal. So get in the habit of setting the next step, setting a deadline, then committing that when that step is complete, you're setting the step after that and setting a deadline. It's okay to set steps a few out in advance, but just keep in mind, things may change. Information is going to change the sequence of steps. So just make sure you keep in mind those steps are mutable, but you can set a bunch of goals in advance. Sure. set some deadlines, but always recommit to reevaluating that next step, setting a specific deadline. Then start down that path. And then goals are going to be reached. Maybe they change a little bit along the way, but we're reaching the goals. But always, and this is what I said, rewind back to the beginning of this whole process that I just gave, sit quietly. And I mean it literally, also figuratively on a bigger scale, but sit quietly. All right, I'm working through these goals. Where am I now with clear sight? Where do I want to be? Has it changed? What are the internal barriers? What are the external barriers? Do I need to reevaluate the goals? Working through that process. It's a cycle over and over and over again. And then just live. Frankly, here at the end, near the end of the stream, and it may have dropped off on some platforms. I think YouTube and Twitch probably allow me to go longer. I don't know about Facebook. This is another place where I'm kind of giving the end away. So file it away. Notice if this happens, when this happens for you. But what you'll eventually discover is, I'll give a metaphor, a parable. It's, I believe, a Buddhist parable. But you take a canoe across the river, get to the other side, you pick it up, you're carrying it through the woods. You see your destination ahead. It's a mountaintop. Eventually, you realize, why am I carrying this canoe? You drop it. It's the same thing with this process. This process is there. It works, but foreshadowing the future, what happens is even this process drops. We come back to the very beginning of the stream, the very beginning of this process. And with that, I close my eyes and sit here quietly. Notice the sounds around you, the sensations in your body, the light filtering in through your eyelids, the thoughts arising, weaving throughout, the emotional backdrop of it all. Notice. The breath, continuing breath by breath through your entire lifetime. At the very end of this process, you will discover it can all be summarized in a few words, and really it can be summarized without words. Drop the process. Be here in this present moment, quiet. So see, theoretically, that's all it takes to live up to your true potential. But recognizing that these human minds, bodies, nervous systems, they apparently require a little bit more. So that's the end, but it doesn't invalidate the process. But just know it all comes down to being here right now. I'd love to do these streams daily. Let me know if it's valuable to you. I get really busy. I have a lot of work right now, but I really value doing this. And I appreciate you for being here, for watching this. You can always find these streams. They're definitely recorded on Facebook, though they may end after an hour on there. YouTube should have the full thing. I don't know about Twitch, Instagram. I think they're too long for Instagram to maintain them. So Facebook and YouTube, you can find links to them wherever you're watching this. Hopefully, find my website, retrosession.org, RETROCESSION.org. Or I should say the new version of it, freedom.retrosession.org. I recommend that one. I have a free ebook. Can set up a call with me. Doesn't cost anything. We host a lot of events every single week, free. Most of what I do costs nothing. This isn't a job. It's not a business. I am lucky to be here, to be living, to be speaking. And I just want to share that hope, that love. You are perfect as you are, even if you don't, or maybe especially if you don't believe that. Allow me to say that to you. You are perfect as you are. It just might take some time to see it yourself. I'm not going to tell you to have faith in anything except that. You are perfect as you are. You are perfect. You are loved. I'll go a step further. You are love embodied in this human body. You are love in human form. Until next time, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Feel free to reach out. I'm not somebody who's trying to charge for every minute or an hour. It's not what this is about. This isn't marketing. This is real life. Please reach out if you need something. There's not a hard and fast price for anything I do. Nothing. If you need assistance, you don't have any resources, reach out. I care about you. Willing to help, willing to be that friend, help you along the way. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.